Hello. This will be a demonstration of proposition 16 from book 9 of Euclid's Elements, which says that if two numbers are prime to each other, then the second number is not to any other number as the first is to the second. We're given two numbers, A and B. They will be prime to each other, so A is prime to B. What we want to prove from this is that the second number B is not to any other number as the first number A is to that same second number B. For if this is not the case, then there will be some number C such that B is to C just as A is to B. Now we know from our given that A and B are prime to each other, and we know that numbers which are prime to each other are the least in their ratio. That's what proposition 721 tells us. So A and B are the least numbers in the same ratio as B and C. We also know from proposition 720 that the numbers which are the least in a given ratio measure any other numbers which are in that same ratio the same number of times, the antecedent, the consequent. That's proposition 720. So that because A and B are the least numbers in the same ratio as B and C, A measures B at the same number of times that B measures C. Not all that matters, though. We just care about the fact that A measures B at all. Because what that tells us is that A and B are not prime to each other. Because A measures B, and A obviously measures itself. So A and B won't be prime to each other because A is the common measure of the two of them. But this is contrary to our given, which stated that A and B are prime to each other. And so what will happen if the number C exists is that A and B will both be prime to each other, and they will not be prime to each other, which is impossible. And so we can conclude that there is no such number C, and that B is not to any number, just as A is to B, which is what we set out to prove, which means we're done with the proposition, therefore, etc., Q, E, D. This is a fairly straightforward proposition, fairly simple. It doesn't take too hard to imagine what this is going to look like. 4 and 9 are prime to each other, right? We know that. So what this proposition tells us is that there is no number, just call it X, such that 4 is to 9, just as 9 is to X. There's no number that will satisfy this proportion. That's all I've got to say about this proposition, so I'll end the video here and move on to proposition 9.17.